Rather than having a conventional announcement video, I thought it would make more sense if I kind of showed some of the things that were in one of the announcements that I posted, like how to find things on the calculator without rounding intermediate steps off, or how to handle that problem at the end of homework 9 where you got to do things a little bit differently, that sort of thing. We're going to start with the calculator. So if you can read this, which hopefully this works. This is just a projected notebook, but I've got a sample proportion of 0.2 and a sample size of 190, and then let's say if you want to get a standard error for a confidence interval for P, and this is your sample data. So the way that you can get that, there's a way that you can involve the ANS function, and that's basically what I want to go through. So I've got my calculator here, and let's say that you want to get the standard error. So the confidence interval one where you're going to have P hat underneath the radical, not a P0. Okay, well, you can do it all in one line if you want to, but if you're going to do that, you're going to need to set up parentheses for all the stuff that goes underneath the radical because you're taking the square root of all of that stuff. So to get the order of operations to work right, you need that in there. So you'd have the square root of 0.2 times 0.8 divided by 190. And notice how that's all in parentheses. And that's what you end up with for the standard error, about 0.0290. Okay, well, sometimes the thing underneath the radical is a little bit more complicated. Like if you're getting a confidence interval for a difference of proportions or a difference of means, the kind of stuff that shows up on the homework assignment that's due tomorrow night. So what if, just to kind of show how this would work, rather than doing this all in one shot, what if you first simplified everything underneath the radical and then took the square root of it? So that's a way I can show how to do this without rounding off. So if you had 0.2 times 0.8 divided by 190, you get this number. You get 8.421 and so forth times 10 to the negative fourth. And if you want to take the square root of that without rounding off, the thing that you need is the ANS function, which is down here. Right? It's a secondary function down here, the secondary function of the sign key, where its sign is in plus minus, not sign is in trig. So right there. So you'd want the square root of ANS, which is the answer in the previous line, and there it is. And notice this number and this number are identical. So that's how you do it. That's how you use the ANS function. That ends up being helpful when you're computing a test statistic. Or let's say here, if we were getting a confidence interval, you say, okay, there's our standard error, and let's say we wanted a margin of error now for 95% confidence. And you say, well, this is a proportion. You're going to use the standard normal distribution, so 95% confidence would mean you got to use 1.96 for the critical value. There's ANS again, right? That ends up being helpful to already have the standard error stored in the calculator. So that's what you would do. I think the ANS function is helpful, especially for the stuff in homework 9 and in lab 7 that would be due tomorrow, because that's when you get those big roots. And so then it's helpful if you can kind of break that down a little bit and go, okay, we're not going to do the whole thing at once. We're going to handle what's underneath the radical first, then take the square root of it. Right? Doing it step by step like that, sometimes that does make it simpler, even though in a way it's more steps, but you end up being able to do it faster. So sort of counterintuitively, it ends up being less work. The next thing I wanted to point out is how you get to the preloaded data sets that are already in StatKey. There are ways where you can just link to them and you can get them as CSV files and as Excel spreadsheets and stuff. But you can also get them right in StatKey. They usually show up in the upper left, like what you can toggle to get the one that you want. So let's see, if it's one quantitative variable, we'll go right here. Then right up here where it says mammal longevity, that's it. If I click on this arrow, then I can select one of these other ones. So let's say that I wanted timed traffic flow. Then there's that, and if you need the sample values, they're basically right over here. So if you need to use one of those preloaded data sets and the summary values, and by summary values I just mean like the sample mean, the sample standard deviation, that kind of stuff, if those aren't given in the problem, that's probably the easiest way to do it. The next thing is that last question in homework 9, which is due tomorrow night. The reason I wanted to bring that one up is because it doesn't have x bar sub d and s sub d. So it doesn't have the sample mean difference and the standard deviation of the sample differences. And then the rest of the homework problems do that are from section 6.5. So it's the only one where you have to go and figure them out yourself first. So I made this spreadsheet which will do that for you. If you look at what's here, and this is the thing that's on Canvas that's called section 6.5 example. So the first two rows, first measurement and second measurement, so those are like before and after measurements or something like that. And then all of the ones that have a light blue background are computations that I already have set up in here, where here, this row is just subtracting, which you can tell if you look at it. So 5 minus 11 is negative 6, and 7 minus 26 is negative 19, and so forth. And then the sample mean difference and the sample standard deviation differences, those are respectively x bar sub d and s sub d. And these are just the sample mean and sample standard deviation of the things in this blue row up here. And that's what you want, right? You want those values in order to get a confidence interval or in order to get a hypothesis test p-value eventually, right? Because you need those in order to compute the test statistic. So that's what I would use there. Then that way you don't have to do as much stuff. Because, I mean, you can do it by yourself with a calculator. There's nothing wrong with that. But getting the sample standard deviation here, so the standard deviation of the sample differences, that takes a bit of work. Not that it's hard work, but there's a lot of it. So that's a thing that's probably worth avoiding. And basically, in order to use this spreadsheet, all you have to do is clear out these numbers in the first two rows, the two rows that aren't in blue, and then you put your sample data in there, and then the spreadsheet will do all the computations for you. The only other thing that I suppose I should mention would be the 2 extra credit assignments that cover chi-squared tests and analysis of variance, at least one-way analysis of variance. I put it in that announcement, but those are the next logical steps from difference of proportions and difference of means. I guess respectively as well. So like the next logical step after a difference of proportions is a chi-squared test. The next logical step after a difference of means would be an analysis of variance. So I guess what I'm saying ultimately is if you're going to do those, I would wait until you've got Module 7 done, because that's kind of the springboard for getting to those extra credit assignments. I guess really maybe the best strategy is make sure you got everything else done first, like all the way through Module 8, and then go back and do the extra credit if you have time. But I wanted to get those posted today because there was one person that has everything else done already, and there was somebody else who was pretty close. So I figured if those people wanted to do them, they might as well go ahead and start now. And I kind of had those ready to go, and I was going to post them tomorrow, but they're up now. So that's where they fit, would be somewhere after Module 7. You wouldn't have to do Module 8 before you do those extra credit assignments, but I think you would have to do Module 7.